thank you. And I am in fact in Union County. I'm at the Observer. This is Town Hall meeting number 1017 in the time that I have represented Oregon in the United States Senate. What an extraordinary honor it is. And we'll get to some of the issues, forestry and healthcare and vets and the like in just a moment. But I've got some business that I have to conduct first. And it is particularly an honor to be doing this. We depend so much on our community organizations and the like. And I was scheduled to drop by Community Connection to do this in person, but we had some kind of last minute scheduling glitch, such as life in the Senate. So we're going to do it over Zoom. And my understanding is your coworker, Margaret Davidson, is finally going to get to retire. And here's a copy of the Observer, everybody who can see it. They have a wonderful article. Hope it helps the paper too to get some good coverage, because they do a great service for the community. And up there on the top of the paper, it says, "Story career comes to a close." And that's an appropriate headline. And I'm going to try to make sure people know a little bit more. I particularly think Margaret's done such wonderful work for senior citizens. That's my background, as she knows. I was director of the Gray Panthers for years, and so appreciate Margaret, 25 years as executive director, keeping the doors open, helping all those seniors, feeding folks who are particularly, vulnerable. And I think it's only fitting Senator Merkley and I were able to get some help for the food bank program. That's going to be useful. And I hope that I can get you to say a few words at the end of this send off. But as Oregon Senior Senator, I get a chance to do some things that are particularly meaningful. And Margaret, in honor of your incredible work for Union, Wallowa, Baker, Grant, just always, helping out, I wanted to get a flag flown over the U.S. Capitol, and we're going to present it to you now. In effect, Kathy, who lives in LeGrand, will get it to you. I can't make the retirement party because we're all getting summoned to be back in DC, but I see everybody at Community Connection, all your fans and people who are gonna be there to toast you and whatnot at the retirement party. I can't see if Steve McClure is there, but he's such a good guy. I've known him for years and years. And Margaret, Kathleen will get you this flag flown over the Capitol, and let me hand it off to her. We got to always protect the handling of our wonderful flag. And Margaret, say a couple of things about what's ahead for you, and any kind of thoughts. You leave some really big shoes, I'm telling you. I've got a size 13 foot, and I couldn't fill your shoes.
Oh, yes, you could, Senator. And first of all, I want to thank you very much, and Kathleen also, for honoring me in this way. When Kathleen contacted me a couple of weeks ago and asked me if I'd be available this morning to meet with you, I was just so honored and humbled. It really is very touching. Steve McClure, our board chair, is not here today. He had planned to be here when the meeting was going to be in person, but Steve doesn't do Zoom. So I know he sends his best wishes to you, and appreciated many years of partnership. Community Connection is a fabulous organization. I've had the honor of being at the helm for the last 25 years, but it's not a one-woman show. It takes these wonderful people behind me and dozens more throughout our entire region to really make it the success that it is. And not only our staff, but hundreds of volunteers that we rely on at the senior centers, delivering Meals on Wheels, serving senior meals, running the food pantries, and of course, a fabulous board of directors. But we couldn't do any of this without support from you, Senator Merkley, our U.S. representatives, providing us the opportunity and the resources to make this happen. So it really is a partnership, and it's been my sincere honor and pleasure. And it's, as much as I'm ready to retire and have more time to myself, and you asked me what I'm going to be doing, I don't have a lot planned. I'm going to relax, do some traveling, play for the summer, be a snowbird in the winter. And, you know, I have to say it feels a little bit selfish because I've spent my entire career, my entire life helping others. And so to step away and think this time is all about me is what it feels like the next year or so will be, it's very selfish. So actually, when I told Kathleen I was retiring, and she said, oh, you'll be involved somehow. She says, just in your nature. And at first I thought, no, I'm not so sure, but I think I will be, but it's going to take a little while. But, you know, like you mentioned, our senior programs, I firmly believe that our senior meals programs and our senior centers are key to the longevity and good mental health of our seniors. I really think the senior centers offer a reason for many seniors, many people to get out of bed in the morning, get dressed, because they know they have somewhere to go. They're going to see their friends. They can have a great meal if that's what they want to do. They can play games, just visit, but it gives them a purpose and a reason to get out of bed. And everybody needs that motivation to connect with other people.
You are so right. As you know, I've had a lot of town hall meetings in that senior citizen center.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right in terms of what it means for the older people.
Yeah, it really is. So a lot of people know that we built or remodeled and now have a new regional food bank distribution center. And we do have a grant, another grant coming to help us finish that project off, thanks to you and Senator Merkley. So thank you for that. You know, it's difficult to leave the people of this organization, especially. I will always support the mission of it. I know that.
You know what I think, Margaret? Because you certainly deserve a chance to sleep in a little bit. And like you said, you're going to enjoy your summer, and the summer is, you know,
right,
here just wonderful. I can't imagine your world being without a couple of phone calls where people say, Margaret, we're trying to figure out such and such and such and such, or Margaret, we're trying to figure out where that file is. We've been looking online, but you think there might be some on paper somewhere, like all the rest. So, Margaret, I suspect your wonderful smile and your incredible energy and commitment to people, and you're so right about, you know, seniors, the wonderful work that you all do that Margaret just made mention of is what keeps a lot of older people out of nursing homes and institutional settings. So you're doing more good, and they're enjoying it more at lesser cost.
Definitely.
So big thanks. And I hope some of you community connection folks will participate in this so that when we get to questions, if I have a really hard one, I can bring you all in.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Nice to see you again. And
you too, Margaret.
I'll be following what you do. I'll, you know, be through my personal email instead of my business email, but I'll still be, you know, following you.
Don't be shy. We just love getting your input. All right, folks, let's talk a little bit. Thank you. let's talk a little bit about Union County, the town hall. Again, big thanks to the paper, The Observer, for providing the space. As the son of a journalist, I think we're really lucky to have the small papers out there. I'm leading the effort on the tax credit in the new effort with some version of the Build Back Better bill to make sure we get a little help for our community papers because they're so beneficial to us. And, you know, these town meetings are part of reducing the distance between Oregon and DC. You know, I think for folks in rural Oregon, DC might as well be Mars a lot of the time because of what it really means to people. So the issues that I've been working on are things like forestry, so that we deal with more fire prevention. I wrote the law to prohibit fire borrowing, so we make sure we're focusing on prevention. That's everything from prescribed burns, for example, more scientifically driven, you know, thinning, the funds we've been able to get for more resilient forestry. We can talk about that. And I also want to have a civilian conservation corps to put more young people to work in. Now, a second area besides natural resources is healthcare. I wrote the provision that got in the CARES law for telemedicine. That's really been a lifeline for rural Oregon. And in the most recent budget bill, I got it expanded to audio only, which was a real request of a lot of senior groups and seniors because there's been a challenge getting broadband into every nook and cranny of the state. And for the seniors, they wanted audio only. And in addition, we've made a big push in terms of helping in rural healthcare. You know, the hospitals during the first months of COVID weren't able to do elective surgeries. They had less money coming in. And I used my position on the Senate Finance Committee to get extra money for the rural hospitals, such as the ones in this area. So whether it is forestry, whether it's infrastructure, where we've been able to get some extra funds for roads and transportation systems, we want to make them stronger. We want to make them safer. We want to make them better from an environmental standpoint. So whether it's forestry or infrastructure or medical, these are some of the bread and butter issues that I focus on that you all have told me are important to Union County and to Eastern Oregon. And let's just go to questions. No subjects are off limits. Let's talk about anything you want to.
Terrific. And yeah, for clarity, we do not ask people's party affiliation. We don't ask who you voted for, if you even voted. If you are a resident of Union County, you're welcome to join this conversation. We have, I think, 8 or 9 folks here live on the Zoom. We also hope to get to a few of your questions on Facebook Live. So if you're a constituent, share your question there, and we'll get to a few. So first up, we have Ken in Union. Ken, feel free to unmute.
Is Ken out there in cyberspace?
I couldn't get the mute off.
Great.
I'm Ken McCormick. I am the Veteran Service Officer for the High Valley Post 4060, the Veteran of Foreign Wars. And I also chair the Veteran Advisory Council at our local CBOC in the Grand. And at our meeting that we had the first of the month, we have sort of identified 4 problems that we need to have looked at. And I want to just list off 3 of the problems. And they are the call center, when the vets are calling in to make an appointment or whatever, they're having problems getting through. The travel pay. We have people that have not been paid since July of last year. That's what they're still working on here in Walla Walla. and we have our problem with the care in the community. The care in the community is the department that authorizes getting service outside of the VA. And the problem with the care in the community, they need about 67 employees and they only have like 30. But these three subjects, the call center, the travel pay, and the care in the community, all relate to the one problem I want to ask you about, and that is the hiring process within the VA system. It is a timely thing, and I don't know, here's what came out of my meeting, that unfortunately the vacancies cannot be advertised to refill until the person has already left. Number two, there is so much time involved in getting that position approved for the VA recruiting candidates and getting applicants and interviewing them. Number three, the Department of Human Resources has to check on the candidate's credentials. Four, frequently, the candidates are not willing to wait for that whole amount of time. They're saying that it takes about 6 months to get someone hired. We had a registered nurse at our CBOC that left, and they could not place a needing a new position for somebody to come in until after she actually left. And that was back in November or December, and she will be here maybe in May. And then after May, it's going to take her about another month to learn the new computer programming system they just put in. So we might not see her until June or July. What can we do about cutting down the time it takes to hire people?
And first of all, thank you for the great work you do as advocate for the vets. As you know, I've got a lot of history in the community in this. Back in 2008, I led the push to get the Walla Walla VA to open what you just have been talking about, the CBOC, the community-based outpatient clinic here in LeGrand. And I'm very glad that you have kind of walked me through the 4 areas that you care about the most, because I've been getting a lot of reports about the VA staff being stretched like rubber bands. And to a great extent, some of the challenges we had before are being compounded because there's this new medical record system, what's called the Cerner system. So I'm hearing a lot from vets. Kathy is here with me today. She's been our representative on the ground. She does a phenomenal job, lives in LeGrand here to work.
Yeah, I know Kathy really well.
She's a big fan of yours. And what I want to do is I would like you to maybe put down a little bit more on paper your 4 concerns. The call center, and I know that there's a lot of challenges with that in the waiting time. The travel pay is a huge deal because you got to get people paid because they got rent to pay and groceries to buy, and they got to keep a roof over their head. The care in the community is, I think, taken longer than it should. So that's a 3rd point. And then the 4th is on this rehiring thing. The idea that you wouldn't start, for example, the effort to get a new person in until the person is completely left, that just kind of defies, common sense, because you got a plan, you got to have some certainty and predictability, and folks got to be able to get on, with their life, not spend months and months and months trying to figure out again, how they're going to pay bills and, make a transition. So here's what I'd like to do. If Ken, you can just take a sheet of paper and amplify a tiny bit on those 4 concerns. I am going to myself, I'll get Kathleen, on the follow-up, but I'm going to call the VA myself and ask for the explanation of what they think of this and what they're going to do in each of the 4 areas. So Kathleen will be working with me on it, but I am going to make the call myself, okay? So this is something where I want people to know that their senior senator, who's really put a lot of time into veterans issues, is going to say, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on back there. You know, we're dealing with the next version of the budget, and I want to hold down the cost of medicine, and I heard about clean energy and trying to make sure the billionaires pay some taxes. You know, everybody else pays taxes. Everybody's got to pay their fair share. But I'm going to get the VA on the phone myself, and we'll walk through these 4 issues, and then I'll work with you and Kathleen, and we'll stay with it until we get some improvements. Okay?
Right. Yeah, one of the biggest things about hiring is that if it takes a 6-month period, a guy looking for a job is not going to wait 6 months to go to work for the government.
Of course not. I mean, what I hope I'm conveying, Ken, is that what you're describing, like waiting until the person's completely gone to start, that just defies common sense. You got to,
I agree.
You know, and so much of our work is not about Democrats and Republicans and everybody fighting. But if you're waiting until somebody leaves to start, that just defies common sense. And by the way, in the private sector, nobody does that. When they get a sense of what's coming, they start putting in place a plan to, get going and use every minute to come out of the chute. And particularly now, very competitive labor market, you can't wait a minute. So we'll follow it up, Ken, and I'm going to do this myself, okay? So when you're unhappy about something, I'm the one you hold accountable.
Okay, I got you. I'm going to be holding you there.
You got a deal.
Thanks for joining us today, Ken. Next up, we have Fuji in LeGrand.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Okay. Fuji Kreider in LeGrand with the Stop B2H Coalition. We've spoken a number of times before. This is still the topic I'm going to talk to you about today. B2H, Boardman to Hemingway, the 500 kilovolt mega transmission line cutting through Eastern Oregon, 5 counties. You know about it. I wanted to just fill you in on a few updates. We're over 900 members now, mostly all East Oregonians in the 5 counties, but predominantly in Union County, and that's where we are today. So I remember back in 2015, the first time I talked to you about this issue, and you said to us, engage in all of the decision-making processes, the administrative process, stick with it, and you have good points to make and stick with it. And so I want you to know we've done it since then, and we're still at it full time all the time. We've been through the NEPA process, as you know, but we were denied a final public comment period in the final EIS. We've been through, now we're in our 4th integrated resource planning process with Idaho Power. In both states, we've been interveners 4 times around now. And we've been through the state process, the Energy Facility Siting Council, FSAC, through all of its steps to the end. Now we're in a contested case. We're 20 months in the contested case. We started with 53 petitioners. Now we're still standing 19 litigants with 32 issues in the case. It's going. Eyes are set on Oregon Supreme Court. It just doesn't end. So we're tired. We have a lot of alternatives. We're not a NIMBY group, not in my backyard. We actually propose good alternatives, not pie in the sky. We're very practical and realistic about what can be done. I plan to talk to you today about one of those alternatives, the high voltage DC lines. However, then I discovered that this is just a Union County town hall meeting, not multiple counties, like sometimes you combine us with another. So this is very Union County. So I want to ask I'm going to alternate a little bit, but it's the same topic, but a Union County quintessential question that comes up all the time. And my question is, will you help us, or can you help us If not, to stop the line and do some of these other alternatives that we think are more secure and more resilient grid. But would you help us in Union County that if this line is built, to have it aligned or placed on the designated and approved NEPA route, which is approved by the BLM and the U.S. Forest Service. They're set to go, but Idaho Power is not using the NEPA route in Union County. So this is the quintessential Union County question about the B2H, and that's my question.
Well, let's kind of give people a little bit of context, because I'll always work with you. And, you know, the point is, Fuji, you have been talking about, you know, important, you know, issues. You've been at this well over a decade, you know, as I understand it. And right now you're weighing in with the state. That's important. And look, I've long felt that the big utilities shouldn't be able to build infrastructure without following a rigorous process that includes environmental protections. So what I've tried to do, particularly because there's always concern about wildfire here and throughout, you know, Eastern Oregon, is look for ways to get the power lines hardened to reduce fire risk. So in the bipartisan infrastructure law, I got included my Safe Power Grid Act, which is going to help us do that. And if it's acceptable to you, Fuji, it's kind of hard to make proclamations from the seat of your pants about, you know, long involved federal protections. But, you know, we've always, as you know, Kathleen and I, been willing to work with you. And, you know, I'm going to continue to look. And I think you characterized it correctly. You said, hey, you know, if they do this, you know, we want to be as safe as possible. And I get that. And, you know, the federal right-of-way has been granted. Now there are a variety of state issues. I mentioned the Safe Power Act, talking about trying to harden power lines to reduce fire risks and have fire corridors and all kinds of, you know, approaches, because we know that these are not your grandfather's fires. They're bigger, they're hotter, they're more powerful. They sweep through, you know, a community like this. And let me just say, you know, we've made it a priority to work with you in the past to try to address these environmental and safety issues. And Kathleen, Kathy, and I will continue to do that. And that was what the Safe Power Grid Act is all about.
I remember when the last town hall meeting, we spoke about the fire issue. That was my question, actually. And we were with Union Malawa and we talked about the fire issue. And I'm really pleased to have this Power Grid Act. The alternatives, actually, this one has even been since 2015 at the integrated resource planning process, was to upgrade, reconductor, and fire harden the line. So you can put on the 230 lines, you can go up to 345. At this point, there's 3 lines in path 14 that go into Idaho. If those 3 were updated already, we would have a full 345 capacity line, the equivalent of that already. And here we are a decade later, still community resistance, still a lot of problems and such anxiety for people as it gets closer to eminent domain and all that. And we still don't have them upgraded and fire hardened. So I appreciate this, your act, the Safe Power Grid Act, and we're going to follow it and we'll support that. And if you on your end can also help with just the upgrading, if they really need more capacity, even though we feel we've proved in the PUC they don't. But anyway, that's beyond this topic today. So thank you very much. And we're really on this wildfire thing as well.
We'll follow up with you on the array of environmental, you know, challenges. And, the Safe Power Grid Act, to a great extent, was dedicated to some of the points you've been making over the years.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Fuji.
Yeah.
We're going to go all the way across the Kreider living room to Jim Kreider with the next question.
Wow. Hey, Kreider's, this is kind of like the Senate, where somebody's speaking, and then they go, I yield to my distinguished colleague, who's the greatest thing since night baseball was invented or some such thing. But now one Kreider is yielding to the other Kreider, and it's in the same household. So that's even cooler than all this Senate stuff.
Really, all the way across the table.
All the way across the kitchen table.
So my question is going to be a little bit different because, again, part of what we're trying to do is practice what we preach. And, within the B2H, we've had a citizen portfolio. We've looked at energy independence, energy democracy, and we see some fundamental problems in reaching that energy independence. Because as you know, there are small to medium scale solar producers. You have your rooftop solar, your big box stores, your community solar projects. They can serve local loads over the local distribution system. We can now isolate critical electrical systems and island them so we have resilience during an emergency. But these small to medium scale developers, what we like to call prosumers, they're energy producers and they're also consumers at the same time. We have a new class coming out and they're running into direct resistance from the investor-owned utilities and the consumer-owned utilities. These utilities are adding fees for the privilege of connecting to the grid to sell electricity back to the grid through net metering. We're also seeing utilities reduce the net metering avoided cost rate that they will pay these prosumers. Here in OTEC country, the avoided cost is 1.2 cents and it's monthly, it's not annually. So to put rooftop solar on your roof is not economically feasible. So we're not contributing to that energy independence. And the utilities pretty much refuse to calculate the economic and ancillary services that renewable energy rooftop solar will bring to the grid. So what we're wondering,
Hey, can I just ask the other division of the Kreider household, what does Oregon Trail say when you bring these things up?
Well, he deals with the Oregon Trail. I'm dealing with that.
Okay, Jim, what happens?
Well, we have begun to engage with them. We've had 3 meetings so far, and their concern is that the more people that defect or generate their own energy, the people that are left on the grid will have to pay that difference. Because there are fixed costs in their operating and maintenance. But what we're proposing is a model that occurred in Vermont with Green Mountain Energy, where what they did is they leased rooftop solar and batteries to their customers so that they did not have to build a 300 megawatt gas plant. They found that to be very successful. So we're proposing to OTEC, and we're in the very beginning stages, that in the auto industry, they make a lot of their money by loaning money to buy the cars, more so than they do making the cars and profit. So we're wondering is if OTEC were to be able to lease rooftop solar and batteries to their customers and then take that energy back out of the battery at a lower rate than BPA maybe sells it to them, would they be able to create an economically viable rooftop solar business that helps us become energy independent and also helps OTEC? We're at the beginning stages of this dialogue right now, but we're going to be further pursuing that, but we're doing research. So unfortunately that comes slow, looking for models that have done this before. But if within your energy staff or anything like that, you could help us look at what type of economic model can we come up with so that the utilities do not lose customers because we're generating our own.
Gotcha. So Jim,
together work.
Yeah. here's the thing. There are all kinds of rules about this. I'm chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. I'll talk a little about our Clean Energy for America bill in a minute. But I think what you're saying is you want to work with OTEC to find a win-win situation, something that works for you all and something that works for them. And I'm really big on those kinds of things. I think what I like so much about Union County and the community, here we are, we've been talking for a half an hour or whatever, and nobody's talking about the Dems this and the Republicans that, and they're off and we're on and blah, blah, blah. We're talking about practical ways like Ken just did with the vets. Those vets, they need to have people hired in a quicker fashion. And they're not talking about, well, who's going to be the Democratic person and who's going to be the Republican person. They want, advocates for vets, which is why I work so hard to get the community-based program going. You're doing the same thing. Let's try to find a win-win, something that works for Oregon Trail and something, Oregon Trail Electric, and something works for you guys. Kathleen, Kathy, and I will work on it. We'll talk to Oregon Trail. I go into these things where I say, hey, look, is there something that can pencil out for you all, pencil out for these community folks who are making a good case for, small solar and, small renewables. You're also coming along at a pretty good time in the debate. I don't know how much you know about my Clean Energy for America bill, but as chairman of the Finance Committee, I took the 45 separate tax breaks for energy that are now on the books, and I threw them all in the garbage can. All 45 of them. Little fire, said this is the end of it. Because the system on these tax breaks was just broken. Basically, anybody who was powerful, had a friend, could come in and get a tax break, and they handed them out like lollipops, and most of them were for all kinds of energy projects from yesteryear. And I said, look, instead of those 45, we're going to have one for clean energy, one for clean transportation, and one for energy efficiency. And then we said, which nobody had ever done in the history of tax writing, ever, we said, the more you reduce carbon emissions, the bigger your tax savings. So we were going forward, and this was something that Senator Manchin had been very interested in, with a technology neutral, private sector-based competition to really put everybody on this path, to having a tangible incentive for reducing carbon emissions. And I got this passed by the full Senate Finance Committee, defied all the odds. Everybody back there said, there is no way on earth Ron's going to be able to get this through the Finance Committee, where he basically threw the tax code on energy in the garbage can. And we did it. It now hits more than 50% of the administration's target for reducing carbon emissions, well over. That's according to private analyses. The leading analyst is something called the Rhodium Group. So I'll have our people, Kathleen, we'll try to get Bobby Andres, our star, who was key in putting together the Clean Energy for America bill. But your work is coming up at just the right time. And I think we ought to approach OTEC with a kind of olive branch. Let's see if we can find a win-win here. Something that works for you, something that works for us, works for the community, and really helps small solar. So easier said than done, of course, but let's go to work. And I think you quoted a couple of places where they made it pencil out for the utility and for the community.
Well, thank you. We're used to hard work, and we're willing to put our backs into this to try to make it happen.
We'll go to it.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today, Jim. Next up, we have Andrea in Union.
Hello, Senator Wyden.
Hello, Andrea.
So I'm Andrea Malmberg, and with my husband.
Oh my goodness, the legendary Andrea Malmberg. You know, when you get the masks off and stuff, you get to see everybody again. Andrea, how's it going? You did such a good job when you came back to DC to testify, and as a cattle rancher, you really laid out all our arguments. And tell us what's on your mind today.
All right. Well, we're taking it to the next level. What I'm going to be talking about is really building an upstream economy that is based on restoring our agriculture, regenerative agriculture, and salmon populations. So for those of you that don't know me, I ranch on Little Creek and Catherine Creek with my husband. Those are the headwaters to the Grand Ronde, Snake, and Columbia rivers. And really, there's so many other agriculture producers in our region that are employing regenerative land management practices. We're building soil, we're slowing and saving water, we capture sunlight and carbon, we benefit threatened species and increase biodiversity. And all of this just really helps reduce our risk to weather, to markets, regulations, and actually increases our profitability as well. And I just want to give you a real tangible example. So last summer, when it was 119 degrees, the heat dome, I measured the soil temperature of a place that we have been regenerating for 14 years. And the soil temperature was 88 degrees. And on a place that we bought about 3 years ago that we're managing, we're really trying to regenerate it, the soil temperature was 146 degrees. So that just tells me that there is a lot of hope and what we can do in a really quick time to change species extinction as well as climate change.
So tell everybody, because you got into some of this in your testimony back in DC, what you think the next steps are. And for everybody who doesn't know, Andrea, she's just been a wonderful advocate and winning awards from the Oregon, cattlemen. And, her point about temperature, I think I told Andrea, I was sitting in my little study at our home in Southeast, my home. And it was 116 degrees, last June. Just a few miles away, it was even hotter. And I was struck by the number of seniors who were going to the cooling shelters. And these were homeowners. I would go and I'd talk to elderly widow. And their spouse had passed and they owned their home, but those were built in the days where nobody bought a house with any air conditioning, and they didn't think they could, breathe if they stayed there when it was that hot. So I think you're spot on, Andrea, with respect to making, temperature a big part of the next focus of kind of innovation and science-driven natural resources policy, and tell everybody what you think the next steps are.
Well, the one thing is that even when it is that hot, you can't open your windows because the fires are so bad. So, so we don't have air conditioning in our 1910 historical Union, Oregon home. But what I can tell you is that that there is a clear linkage between abundant salmon and steelhead and thriving economies upstream, and that all roads to salmon recovery in the Pacific Northwest run through Northeast Oregon. And a good part of that is through family-owned ranches, farms, and tribal land. And that means that ranchers and farmers and other land stewards should help design a stepped-up salmon recovery plan for our lands and waters. And as you know, Senator, that when we discussed last summer, Idaho Representative Simpson's Columbia Basin Initiative, you asked me to create Andrea's plan instead of—
Love it. Tell everybody about Andrea's plan, because I have been talking to people back there about some of your ideas. You know, the plan from the congressman, you know, over there, and now Patty Murray and the governor of Washington have got the stakeholders. But tell everybody a little bit about Andrea's plan, because I've been sharing it with people.
All right. So, well, it's not Andrea's plan because I do it the Oregon way, and I work with neighbors and cross constituencies. I am used to and actually kind of relish in doing consensus building and working across group lines. And so we created a 17-point plan. Much of it can actually be funded by the Infrastructure Investment Act. So it included things like energy production and storage, energy efficiency, substation improvements for grid resilience, like we heard from my great neighbors. And we talked about irrigation modernization, in-stream flow augmentation, which Tony and I have been doing quite a bit, you know, so that 88 degree pasture, we actually had all of that water put in stream for salmon while doubling our production in 14 years. So there is not an essential conflict between doing what we need to do to support agriculture, doing what we need to do to build this upstream economy, and doing what we need to do to save salmon. However, what it does is really hinges on is the removal of those lower Snake River dams. And that is not something that you just do for salmon, but those dams are impacting agriculture communities. So right now, what's going to happen if the steelhead and salmon are listed? What's going to happen to irrigators is they're going to get a taking, right? You know, they're already listed as threatened. If they get endangered, it's going to be like the Klamath Basin. And by not addressing these issues, by employing really practical, profit-driven solutions, we can achieve all that we need to do. So there's really should be no conflict here.
Well, let's kind of walk through three of the pieces to the puzzle, okay? Senator Murray and Governor Inslee are talking about a kind of stakeholders effort on the dams specifically to see if they can find a way to some common ground. And there, as you know, differing views on this. It's a multiple use challenge. You know, you got fish runs, you're clearly making that point. You got people who care about trade, you got people who care about the price of fuel. It's a challenge. So let's put that in kind of one basket. But I didn't know you were going to come today, but I'm thrilled that you did and have made this presentation. And as I was listening to you, we could get started right now on a couple of pieces of your stakeholders project, what I called the Andrea plan. We call it that in our office. But with your leave, we could start looking at some of the irrigation money, for example, and the storage money that's in the BIF, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Fund bill. So as the effort goes forward, the Inslee-Murray effort on the dams to try to find a multiple use strategy that brings people together, we could start on what you're doing and start looking for some of the resources from the bipartisan infrastructure bill that's passed. Now, I was listening and you probably heard me talk about my Clean Energy for America bill, which has passed the Finance Committee, and I believe we're still going to get it enacted in this session. we have money for energy storage in that, real incentives for energy storage. So let's look at plan in 3 lanes, okay? Murray, Inslee, multiple stakeholders trying to see if they can find, common ground. Let me go to work on trying to get some help from the BIF, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, particularly in the areas you mentioned, like, irrigation. And then as we look to the future of energy policy, storage is going to be huge. Storage is a big aspect of my Clean Energy for America bill. And under energy efficiency, storage is front and center. It's one of the key planks of Clean Energy for America. So if you're willing, I'll have Kathleen follow up and we will work in kind of 3 lanes. How's that sound?
It sounds great. I'd like to also add that the upstream economy plan is what we call it.
Good.
We're also really advocating for the civilian climate corps. So I would love to add that. And then I want
mentioned it before you came on. I mentioned that specifically. I'm one of the authors of the Civilian Conservation Corps. 3 cheers for you.
Awesome. And I also want to invite you to our ranch in Union County to see the results and the potential and the barriers that do exist for realizing the benefits of regenerative agriculture and building this upstream economy. You're always welcome.
Well, I want to take you up on that offer. And before we let Andrea go, I want to say thank you for the wonderful testimony you gave on the River Democracy Act. You helped us show that nothing in the legislation would affect private property rights or existing mining and grazing rights or any valid or vested water right, that merchantable timber and cutting it is allowed in the wildfire risk reduction plans, and that the wildfire plans, particularly on page 14, 15, and 18, make it clear that the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management will have a wildfire reduction plan in every river corridor that's in the bill. And there'll be funds for it, and nothing would alter the authority to conduct wildland fire operations, including building temporary roads. And Andrea, you did a terrific job representing Union County that day and spelling out all those protections that relates to fire and land use in the community. And I really want to thank you. And let's, as we move forward to advance river democracy, which I think can be a real economic engine for rural Oregon, let's go forward with this kind of approach that you've advocated. And I think those 3 lanes that I think you've opened up make a lot of sense.
Terrific.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks for joining us, Andrea. Next up, we have Margaret in LeGrand. Margaret Mead, I should say. We have 2 Margarets.
And I am going to pass my time on to Randy.
All right. Randy, I believe you're in Union. Randy, go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Margaret. And good morning, Senator.
I'm sorry, we just had a restart. Go ahead.
No, I can appreciate that. We're in rural Oregon, and we still have issues. Yes, and we still have issues with high speed. So I wanted to touch on a social issue that I believe the county and we are experiencing locally coming out of the pandemic. That rural counties like Union very often lack the infrastructure and resources to address the needs of the most vulnerable in their communities: homeless youth, battered and abused women, and young children. Union County in particular is experiencing increased populations of at-risk adult and youth populations. While some work is being done in response to this crisis, community advocacy organizations with limited resources are unable to respond adequately in a timely manner of the additional impacts of the recent announcements that the only community facility, Union County Warming Station, that provides the only temporary seasonal service is being forced to shutter its doors and to seek a new location in the coming year. In addition, we learned that our only other significant direct service organization, Shelter from the Storm, serving battered and abused women, is in need of a larger facility to accommodate increased needs for houseless youth and families. The service that struggles with complex issues of funding and lack of resources necessary to protect and sustain the needs of people in the community. The pandemic, without a doubt, impacted many lives and communities. And now, in a moment of hope, we are again seeing the continued behind-the-scenes devastation impacting the most vulnerable in our communities, battered and abused women, children, and young adults. My question, Senator, is what additional resources or programs do you see at the federal government level that can assist these organizations in reducing these impacts? Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for all your advocacy. And it seems like what you've talked about in this enormous need fits into two baskets. One is housing, and the second is mental health. Is that a fair way to kind of get started on this, or should there be kind of other areas that we kind of walk through? Because I've been making notes, writing fast and furious as you talk, but does this mostly come down to housing and mental health?
It does.
Okay. Well,
I'm comfortable.
You can add on to this. First, with respect to shelter, because we talked about women who've been battered and abused, and children. I mean, this is just morally repugnant in a country as strong and rich as ours. Let's hold on for a second. Is that on Randy's end?
Yeah, if you could mute.
Yeah, Randy, I just muted you. Feel free to unmute yourself if you need to respond in a bit.
Okay. Randy, I'll talk, and then we want you to come back in. So with respect to shelter for battered and abused women and children, I proposed something called the DASH Act, Decent, Affordable, Safe Housing for All. And the centerpiece is really getting a roof over their head and a floor under their feet for the kind of people Randy is talking about. So, because you don't get decent, affordable, safe housing for all, you don't get that all done in 15 minutes. I've been using these budget bills, particularly the Recovery Act that started this, to try to get as much as we could in terms of help for shelter beds and housing vouchers for the people that Randy is talking about. And we can get other kinds of, changes, particularly for older people in rural communities, so that they can get help to renovate their homes when the place is aging and the like. And we're willing to work with you on shelter beds, housing vouchers, warming stations, because a grand night in the winter can be just bitterly cold. So we can work with you, Randy, on those matters. Now, a big part of this is the mental health issue. Mental health was serious before the pandemic. the needs have gone through the stratosphere during the pandemic, and particularly in rural areas. The isolation has contributed to this. Young people have had challenges with distance learning and challenges at home. And Trace Tyrell of Lapine testified before my committee, where I chair the finance committee, and said that more than 80% of the calls for young people seeking mental health assistance never even got answered. And this is the views of an outstanding Lapine student, Trace Terrell, who's going off to Johns Hopkins in the fall and gonna be a real credit to Oregon over the years ahead. So with your leave, Randy, and we'll get you unmuted so you can respond. We'll work with you on shelter, warming stations, shelter beds, housing vouchers. I also have led the effort to expand LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits, which can go to constructing more low-income housing. We'll work with you on that, and then we'll work also on the behavioral health issues. And you've got a lot of challenges there, particularly to get more people to work in the field. We desperately need more mental health workers. And Senator Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho, is working with me as chairman of the committee. He's the senior Republican, to get a major behavioral health bill passed in this session.
Well, thank you, Senator. I think at this point, what I would say is that I'm meeting with both facility organizational leadership early in the first of the next month, and to drafting an issues document to share with your office.
Good.
That will help to point out specifically where we believe that the needs exist. So again, I appreciate your time and listening.
We'll get to work on warming station, shelter beds, housing vouchers, low-income housing tax credits, renovations for older people. Those are all some of the ideas that kind of come to mind, and we can work with them.
And if I may, Senator, in closing, I would like to add that, the pandemic has taught, I think, the American people, as well as our elected leadership, the value and importance of the virtual engagement process. And to now moving back to the real world, per se, so many organizations now are very quickly severing that relationship between virtual and in person. And it is sincerely, at least my hope and our organization's hope, that our elected officials will continue to see the value of maintaining at least a hybrid form of public engagement process. So thank you for hearing me out, Senator.
Randy, you're spot on this hybrid kind of idea, because there is a role for both. And I think we know that virtual helped us get through the pandemic. I still love the fact that, people could come and look their elected officials in the eye and say their piece and hear what they have to say. And I think your characterization of hybrid is spot on.
Well, thanks for joining us, Randy. And to insert myself a moment, People's Town Hall is very excited about the prospect of hybrid town halls in the months ahead. So, Randy, let's connect offline. See if we can help you. So next up, we have Maxine in La Grande.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I can.
Hi. Thank you for all of it. I've been kind of in and out of listening because I've got another little project going on. But thanks for all the support for the homeless, and Randy has been essential in that. And there are just so many issues. We've got at least 4 local groups looking for a place to house people. We've never had that before. and I've been in property management for 35 years. So we sure do need some help.
Good.
So thank you.
And I think that, you know, there are also rules because HUD has limitations on rentals and the like, and we want to work with you on all of these issues.
Yes, and the issue about putting more than, I mean, everywhere regular people that work have to share housing because you can't afford stuff on your own. And the HUD rules are definitely in the way, and that's a federal thing. Nobody here can do anything about that. It's been in the way for years, and it's now worse than ever. So thank you.
I'm gonna talk to some of the housing people in DC on this. Sherrod Brown is chairman of the Senate Housing and Banking Committee, and he's also a member of the Finance Committee and a very valuable one. And I'm gonna dig in. We'll be talking myself and Kathleen to Senator Brown and his staff very quickly to see what we might do on the HUD side.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us,
you.
Maxine. So our final question is from Teresa. I'm afraid we won't have enough time to get to questions via Facebook today. We will try to prioritize those questions at the town hall later today for Wallowa County. So if you're watching on Facebook and are able to tune in there, we will try to get to your questions before the end of that program. Teresa, take it away. Teresa Smith-Dixon, are you able to unmute?
Unmute. Hello?
Hello.
Hey, Teresa, you're the Gray Panther, right?
Yes. Where am I on a photo too? Did I unmute my?
We can't see you, but we can hear you loud and clear.
I just kind of remembered the name.
Tap to speak. Okay. I don't know. Are you hearing me now?
I am.
Okay. Well, start my video. There we go. Okay.
There you are.
Anyway, you know, this is so great to be here today. And yes, I do remember us sitting around the table at Mary Radke Klein's writing nursing home.
Yes.
And also the shared housing thing. If you remember, we did sponsor.
That was a Gray Panther project. That was Maggie Coon's dream.
Yeah. And I did some work in Clackamas County on that. We tried to help people share housing more back then. Anyway, and you know, sitting here, I know almost everybody who has spoken, and you know, I'm a member of the B2H coalition, and I'm a member of Healthcare for All Oregon, and my son works for the Umatilla tribes in river restoration. So it's like, you know, maybe we notice it more, but in rural areas, we really are all connected. It's just so amazing. So anyway, that just really kind of brought that home to me as I sit here and listen to everybody's comments. And my husband and I have been a very, very long-term supporters of getting some kind of conservation course started. So let's keep moving on that one. Back when he worked for the Forest Service and he got the stimulus money the first time we did that whole round, and he was sure we were having CCC coming, and he was so disappointed. So let's keep working on that too. But the issue that I wanted to talk about, which you know a lot about healthcare, is the direct contracting for Medicare. I'm really, and it's brought totally home this week when I got a letter from my doctor's office, and I've been telling my doctor I do not support this, that the privatizing of Medicare, and this is, you know, nobody knows, the run-of-the-mill person who gets this paper to sign, that is signing up for this thing that's going to make our healthcare more efficient and less cost, and they'll be able to give us better care, is really just a guise for privatizing our Medicare. And Ron, I'd like to know what we're doing to stop this, because this got snuck in, you know, during Trump, and we didn't get rid of it. And we need to. And so anyway, let me hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, Teresa, you're right to be concerned about what Trump was up to, because I think, and let me see if I can kind of put this into context in terms of Oregon. Because when I did my universal coverage bill, you know, and I had 7 Dems and 7 Republicans. I said, everybody at least ought to get what their congressperson has. Well, people said, what does their congressperson have? And it's federal employee health benefits. It's like the Forest
Right.
Service. So Oregon has now one of the highest percentages in the country of people using Medicare Advantage. Because in my view, we got pretty good Medicare Advantage because you think about it with Kaiser. That's the first thing you think about, you know, when you think about, you know,
I worked
Medicare.
with Kaiser for years. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's pretty good and people like it. So a lot of people who I think out of the Trump years wanted to go in a very different direction, which is just, you know, not a Kaiser, you know, plan, but just really just pure privatization. I remember when I first heard about it, Teresa, you know, I'd just gotten on the finance committee. I was a young guy. They never had anybody with my background on the finance committee, Gray Panther guy and all the rest. And Chairman Baucus, he gave me a lot of opportunities. You know, he didn't agree with everything I was up to, but he gave me a lot of opportunities. And we had a hearing on some of the Medicare Advantage, which wasn't exactly like Kaiser. And there was apparently one plan where people went door to door in senior neighborhoods and they dressed up like they were doctors and nurses and said, we doctors and nurses are telling you you should buy our Medicare Advantages. They're pretty early times. And I remember Max Baucus brought everybody together afterwards and said, well, we got to do something about this. And everybody says, well, we could have this rule, that rule. And he looked over at me and he knew I would have strong views about it. He says, Ron, you've been doing this for a long time, you know, stopping the Medigap ripoffs. You remember that? I think, Teresa, you know, when all these insurance salesmen would sell garbage, you know, wasn't worth the paper it was written on. And he said, what should we do about this MA stuff where people are selling door to door and impersonating providers? And I said, well, Max, personally, I think we ought to put them in jail. Everybody's jaw just dropped. You know, they'd heard about rules and regulations. I said, put them in jail. This is fraud. It is just fundamental fraud. So I want you to know, Teresa, we're going to look really carefully at what this is all about, because I'm not for what Trump was doing, but I've always thought that, you know, Kaiser was a pretty good model. And since you work there, you know about it. So
yeah, it's not in rural areas. It's not the same. And this is my small rural family medicine office that's telling me I need to sign up for this. In fact, they pretty much don't even, I mean, they say you have to sign it, but actually what I understand is it pretty much the whole organization is, you know, it's probably, I don't have a choice.
Tell me, Teresa, what do you have for your Medicare? Do you have?
No, I have Medicare. I want to keep Medicare.
Traditional Medicare.
Yep.
Yeah. And
yep.
do you buy into Part D, or what do you do for your health care?
I have Part B.
Yeah.
And
what do you do anything for prescriptions like D or anything like that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Because my copay is pretty good with my Medicare supplement. My husband's federal.
You stated it just right. You want to keep your traditional A for the hospitals, B for docs and outpatients, and you don't want your traditional A and B taken over by a bunch of fly-by-night private operations. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Great. I am going to make sure that doesn't happen.
But we're encouraged. It's being encouraged, and people don't even know it. And we're never going to get health care for all if we lose our Medicare for all, like we talk about. That's what we want, and it's going backwards with programs like this. It's going backwards.
Well, I'm going to make this a two-part exercise. I want people to be able to keep traditional Medicare who want it, A and B. I want people who are looking at Kaiser type programs, if they want that option, to be able to do it. But I'm sure not going to let a bunch of private stuff come on in there and try to wreck Medicare number one. And if anything, what I'm doing, Teresa, you probably followed that before Orrin Hatch retired, I was able to update the Medicare Guarantee to start including chronic disease.
Right.
And diabetes and heart disease and strokes and COPD. So not only do I want to make sure you're not denied traditional Medicare in A and B, I want to strengthen it so that it can pick up some of the chronic care benefits, which, by the way, Kaiser, to their credit, got right on it as soon as the thing became law. But I sure am going to be opposed to anybody taking what you have that you like, taking it away. And literally in the bill I wrote before Orrin Hatch retired that we got passed into law, it was updating the Medicare Guarantee. And I want to make sure it gets to traditional Medicare.
All right. Yeah.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have Kathleen and some of our finance people work with you on this.
Okay.
I may need you to do some. If Maggie Kuhn was alive today, I think Maggie Kuhn would probably say at the end of a Gray Panther meeting, because you and I remember this, she would probably quote John Lewis, paraphrase John Lewis, and she'd say, "All right, us Gray Panthers, time to go out and make some good trouble."
Yep.
All right, to be continued, okay?
Okay. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Kathleen.
So pleased to see you on this call. It brings back incredible memories. Wouldn't trade those 7 years as co-director of the Oregon Gray Panthers for anything. Take good care.
Thanks for joining us, Teresa. So that is it for our Union County Town Hall. Thanks, everyone who joined us on Facebook or here live on the Zoom. Senator Wyden, any final words for folks?
Well, I would just say to Union County, I think if the founding fathers were around to hear what you all have had to say over the last hour and whatever it's been, 20 minutes, an hour and a half, whatever it's been, they'd say this is the way democracy is supposed to work. Over this period, I don't know how many questions we got plenty. There wasn't a bad question from Union County in the House, not a single one. Everyone was substantive, specific. Nobody was hollering at anybody else and calling them a bunch of names and, threatening to smack them in the jaw or something. This was kind of the way it's supposed to work. And I just want you to know it's a tremendous honor to represent you in the Senate. I don't have all the answers, not by a long shot, but I know this is the way it's supposed to happen. And Nathan knows this. In a lot of communities, this is not the way it's done. There isn't this kind of involvement. This is the way I do it. Senator Merkley doing community meetings, because we're a long way from Washington, D.C. We talked about that with Margaret. And when we honored Margaret Davidson, we're going to keep shortening the distance, making sure that I can magnify people's voices, chip away at some of this understandable distrust. And look, I wrote some of the fundamental laws that have guided digital communications, Section 230, internet tax, encryption rules, and the like. We also know that there have been some challenges with all that, because there's an awful lot of misleading stuff out there on platforms and online. So when we have these kinds of meetings, and I see Randy's face, Randy really summed it up. He said, let's make sure that in the days ahead, we use the fruits of modern technology, like this virtual town meeting. Let's also have a role for in-person town meetings. Randy called it the hybrid system. So big thanks, Union County. You never fail to come through. And I'm just going to close this meeting by saying I've really gotten a lot out of this, and we'll put further discussion in the to be continued basket. Thanks, Union County.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.